minds instead of gratitude. And as we heard in Colossians, a thankful spirit is crucial. It is essential to our spiritual, emotional, and physical health. Now, I have learned this over 35 years wearing this uniform. And I have attended a number of chaplain schools, and I know that Pastor Greg and Pastor Pitt has seen this too, is they like to send you to chaplain school in Alabama. And they like to send you to Alabama in July. Every time I got a course, it was July. Well, did you get to go in July or August? And I'm from Colorado. I grew up in the mountains of Colorado. So when I'm thinking about beautiful hiking in the nice, cool Colorado Rockies, they say, time for you to go to Alabama, to muggy and hot. So I always went and enjoyed myself, and each time I journeyed, I have been reminded, though, interestingly, about the importance of a thankful heart. The first affirmation on gratitude came when I was at school one year, and Dr. Gary Collins, who's a famous writer for pastoral counseling, was lecturing. And he quoted another psychologist by the name of Selye, who wrote this phrase: gratitude is the most important emotion governing our behavior and attitudes. At first I was a bit surprised by the quote. What about love or fear? However, it does fit with Paul's teachings in Colossians that a thankful spirit is absolutely critical to healthy existence. Other conditions, other emotions contribute to our frame of mind, but gratitude is a major ingredient in the proper mix. Then a day or two later, I was given a book by a chaplain, Leeds, and in the book on spirituality by a man named Roberts, and in the book, Roberts had an entire chapter on gratitude in this book on spirituality. And he made two significant points in the chapter. He said, first of all, when we dwell on bad things, we make ourselves miserable and take away our emotional energy. An example is that psychologists tell parents not to let your children watch the news clips of a disaster. So right after 9/11, you know how often they played the crash into the Twin Towers? And the psychologists would say, don't let your children watch that time after time after time. That the images are embedded so deeply that it can become dangerous psychologically as they replay. And we're learning that now with our soldiers and airmen who come back with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Secondly, Roberts taught that when we accept the things we cannot change and move on to focus on that which we are grateful for, we restore happiness and energy. And that is at the heart of the 12-step process used by many groups today, such as AA. It is the famous Serenity Prayer by Reinhold Niebuhr. When I went to Washington, D.C., I found out a whole nother level of echelon of bureaucracy. And I finally, early on the first year, I pulled out the Serenity Prayer and I put it up above my desk and I said, this is what I need, especially in this environment. Because it says this, doesn't it? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And in D.C. there's many things I cannot change. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I went home again, thankful for a hot, muggy summer in Alabama, because I was reminded that gratitude needs to be a premier emotion for every believer. You know, at the same time, though, I want to emphasize that biblical gratitude in Colossians is not meant to be just a denial of challenges and problems. Thankfulness here is not an ostrich approach to life, whereby we stick our head in the sand and ignore the realities around us. In order to be thankful people, we do not have to ignore that we truly do live in a world plagued by plane crashes over the Hudson and severe economic recessions, or that the world is truly full of evil and dangerous people. No, gratitude in the biblical sense is not the denial of evil and problems. Rather, it is the biblical focus that helps us to look and see the rainbow after the floods of life. One of the most powerful times, again down in Alabama, that I had was to get to go to a preaching seminar with Dr. Claypool, who was a famous pastor and preacher. And he was very vulnerable with us. The first day that we got down there, he said, "I need to tell you that a few years ago, my lovely daughter in her 20s was killed in an auto accident. She died quickly." He said, "It took me years to recuperate." He says, "I was so shaken and broken." He says, "I felt so alienated from God." And he said, "I want to tell you how I came out. How did I come out the other end of that dark, dark time in my life?" And he said that it was gratitude that brought him back. He started to focus on her smile, forever pasted in his mind. Gratitude for the joy of having her in his home for 18 years growing up. Gratitude for all that she taught him about life. And he said in conclusion, it was that thankful spirit, as I became to think on those things, that restored the hope and the energy to where I could renew myself in my walk and in my ministry. He said it was the only thing that worked for him. That's how powerful gratitude can be. And I've seen that validated many times. One of the things I get to do is go up to Wilford Hall or ride on the planes back with the wounded soldiers and sailors. And you have to realize right now we're saving almost everybody who gets injured. But there are very severe disabled soldiers and airmen coming home with multiple lost limbs, brain traumas. And they're alive, but they are injured for life and will face many, many challenges. And yet almost all of them that I go witness and see have a tremendous spirit and a grateful heart. And they are looking to the future. They have hope. They have a vision of what they can still do. All this goes to reinforce the fact that we should not take for granted too many things. Unfortunately, we often do take many things for granted. Let's face it. More than often than not, we take each other for granted. We take God for granted. And we take what we have for granted. I experienced this 5 years ago. I had just been out to D.C., and all of a sudden my brother had a serious stroke. He had been out in the parking lot, getting out of his car. He always parked out far in the parking lot so he would get more exercise walking in. But of course, that day he fell right by his door and nobody saw him for several hours. And so the stroke was severe. And I went dashing out to Colorado to be with my brother.